AskReddit by throwaway 121,270. What is the greatest fuck it, I'll do it myself in history? Deleted. He also didn't patent the polio vaccine, I believe, and he tried to help fight the AIDS epidemic even before he died. Let's not forget that Isaac Newton ran out of math to work with and was like, I guess I'll just invent calculus then. He was self-quarantined during the plague. Otis invented pretty much what we consider the modern elevator. Nobody was convinced it was safe, so he hoisted himself up extremely high and had somebody cut the cable with an axe to prove how confident he was that the elevator was safe regardless of almost worst case scenarios. Otis UK are based in Reading. When they answer the phone they say hello, Otis Reading. In 1888, Almond Brown Strowger, an undertaker, noticed he was losing a lot of business to the other undertaker in town. He found out that the other undertaker's wife was a telephone operator, and when she intercepted people asking to be connected to Strowger's funeral home, the operator would route the call to her husband's funeral home instead. 3 years later, Strowger patented the automatic teller exchange, a system which allowed telephone users to make calls without the need for human operators, single-handedly destroying an entire workforce. Imagine being so pissed off you don't just get someone fired, but remove their job from existence entirely. Cliff Stoll, the cuckoo's egg, noticed weird traffic on his university servers. No one believed him that there was any risk occurring. Ended up uncovering a major hacking attempt to steal missile designs and basically created internet security. I think it was missile designs. It's been a long time. I bought Klein bottle earrings from this guy. He sells all different sizes. He sent me pictures of his cat along with them. I don't know if I'm allowed to post links to shop here, but if you search for Acme Klein bottles, that's his site. Jon Snow, not that one. The father of epidemiology. No one believed him that the cholera outbreak in what is now Soho was because of a contaminated water pump. He broke it. They arrested him for vandalism and held him until the outbreak suddenly ended. Edit, corrected the location. He was also a pioneer when it came to anesthetics. Queen Victoria permitted him to put her under for the birth of 2 of her children. I visited his memorial in Brompton Cemetery a few years ago. He's right round the corner from Emmeline Pankhurst's grave. Both sites had fresh flowers on them. Probably the time Nando Pirado and Roberto Canessa decided they couldn't wait around any longer and legged it for 10 days across the Andes with no warm clothes, climbing gear, or food except some scraps of their dead friend stuffed into a sock. They finally found someone out in the middle of nowhere, Sergio Catalan, who rode horseback all night and then took a bus to get some help. The mountain climbers had come from the wreckage of a crashed plane that everyone had been looking for over Tomos. They needed help for the other survivors who were injured and starving. They saved 14 of their friends. There's a book written about it by one of the survivors himself. Miracle in the Andes. 72 Days on the Mountain and My Long Trek Home by Nando Pirado. I never watched the movie, but the book still gets me to this day. It is one of the most disturbing depictions of humans' ability to survive even under the deadliest circumstances. A really humbling read, reminding us of our own fragility and how terrible fleeting everything truly is. It's gotta be Amo Koivunen. He was a Finnish soldier in the Second World War when the Finns were trying to reclaim land from the Soviets. He got separated from his unit mid-war in the middle of nowhere. He was the one tasked to carry the drugs they held in case of injury or tiredness, one of which was Pervitin, which was literal meth in a tablet form. Instead of just taking 1 or 2, he downed the whole bottle and went on a weeks-long methed up rampage. He got hit by a landmine, evaded Soviet soldiers, caught a bird and ate it raw, all while on skis. He finally made it back to finish lines where on arrival, he weighed only 90 pounds or so and had a heart rate of 200 beats per minute. He ended up living for another 45 years. Edit, here's https://thidorkidges.com/amo-koivunen-the-finished-soldier-that-survived-everything closed bracket an article if you want to read more and see a pic of his unyielding stare. I fucking love it whenever this story gets mentioned. It's so crazy as to be unbelievable, but it's true. A movie needs to be made about this guy. Brian Acton interviewed at Facebook and got turned down. He said fuck it and built WhatsApp. Several years later, Facebook bought WhatsApp for $19 billion. Edit, https://twitter.com/Brian Acton/status /310954438 right square bracket open bracket https://twitter.com Brian Acton status /3,109,544,383 equals 19. Here is his tweet from 2009, the day he interviewed. I'm getting this framed for my desk at work. I downloaded it for free. Morris Hillman invented over 40 vaccines during his career in the pharmaceutical industry. In 1963 his oldest daughter caught the mumps. He cultured a sample from her, developed a vaccine, and injected it into his younger daughter. That vaccine is still in use and has saved millions of lives. In total, it's estimated that his work has saved 118 million lives globally. And because he used it on his daughter, it is to this day the fastest any effective vaccine has ever been produced. The guy who started FedEx wrote a college paper about a nationwide overnight shipping company, and got a C, started the company anyways. Later, after he started it and it was struggling, he couldn't get a loan and the company was almost bankrupt, and he bet next week's payroll at the casino on roulette and won. Also got a Silver Star in the Vietnam War and now co-owns the Washington Redskins, the latter often viewed as the biggest failure in his life. It was blackjack, not roulette. Hello Major. He liberated an entire village from Nazis by himself. He's one of the handful of super badass soldiers you sometimes hear about from WW2. You can read all about his exploits against the enemy here. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/lo_major. It's a fantastic read and every line you think no, he didn't actually do that. I'm surprised no one's mentioned Catherine the Great of Russia. She decided her husband was useless, which, granted, he was, and proceeded to set up a military coup to overthrow him. Even with the plan being discovered early, she dressed herself in military garb and marched with her new army, which had just sworn loyalty to her, down to Peter's palace, where he was forced to resign the throne, all without a single drop of bloodshed. At least until Peter turned up dead sometime later under shady circumstances, but honestly for a military coup it was pretty non-violent. If saying fuck it, I'm ruling Russia myself isn't great, I dunno what is. I mean, it's right there next to her name for a reason. It's incredible, especially considering A. She's a lady. B. She wasn't Russian. C. She wasn't originally Russian Orthodox. Not a very old story. Manji, or the Mountain Man, lived in a very remote village of India whose route to nearby was blocked a mountain, and hence villagers had to climb it every time. And they had to do that daily to get essential supplies. During one of these trips, his wife fell down the mountain. He loved her a lot. He tried first to persuade the gov to do a mountain tunnel project there, but to vain. So he went on alone to break the entire mountain with just an axe. He did that for 10 plus years and finally succeeded. There is a Bollywood movie on him too, title, Manji, the Mountain Man. I feel like he went through a lot of axes lol. That's pretty impressive though. Deleted. Desmond Doss. Single-handedly saved from 50 to 100 men up on Hacksaw Ridge in Okinawa. His company was ordered to retreat when they were attacked by the Japanese, but instead he said nah, stayed up on the ridge alone, unarmed, and dragged as many soldiers as he could to safety without any help. Even when he was shot by a sniper and riddled with shrapnel, He made sure they took another guy down the hillside before him. Edit. I'm aware there is a movie. I've read about him before and I know he's done more than just what is in the movie. I just didn't want to make a 3,000 word post about them anyways. This guy is amazing. Australian stretcher bearer Leslie Allen did a similar thing on Mount Tambu. Carried out 12 men one at a time on his back alone. Received a Silver Star. James Clerk Maxwell was idolized by Einstein as being the father of modern physics. Not only did he formulate the classical theory of electromagnetic radiation, but just for shits and giggles he calculated exactly what Saturn's rings were made from using pure mathematics. It wasn't until Voyager 1 and 2 passed by and took photos in the early 80s did we get confirmation that Maxwell was right. He then calculated how to take a color photograph in 1855. This was then achieved in 1861 and is recognized as the first ever color photograph. Don't forget his advances in statistical mechanics. Juan Pujol Garcia was a Spaniard who created his own counterintelligence operation for the Allies during WW2. Initially, he approached British and American intelligence to offer them his services, but both countries rebuffed him. Undeterred, Garcia created a fictional persona as a pro-fascist Spanish official and got himself recruited by the Nazis, who directed him to travel to Britain to recruit agents. Instead, Garcia created a network of fictitious agents and sub-agents using publicly available information like newspapers and travel brochures. It was at this point that he again contacted Allied intelligence, and he was finally recruited. Garcia continued his work throughout the war, and for the same operation, he received both a knighthood from the British and the Iron Cross from Nazi Germany. The Nazis never realized that he was a double agent. Yes. In the lead up to Overlord he confirmed reports that the Allied attack would come from Dover and wouldn't attack Normandy. Then, at the last moment he confirmed that the Allies in fact would attack Normandy. But it was too late for the Nazis to act on it. So afterwards the Nazis still trusted him as they would point to him and say he was the only one who predicted the Normandy invasion. It was technical issues, as always, that meant the data got to us late. In 1947 a guy named Thor Heyerdahl was trying to prove his theory that the Polynesian islands were settled by people from South America, not Asia. Nobody believed him because it was thought that crossing such a large ocean with the technology they had back then was impossible. So he decides to build a boat using only the tools and materials available at the time these migrations took place. And then he sailed that boat across the Pacific Ocean, nearly dying in the process, but ultimately making it to the Polynesian islands. Thor Heyerdahl was a bit of madman. He also tried to prove that the ancient Egyptians could have crossed the Atlantic Ocean by rebuilding one of their boats and, well, sailing across. It took 2 tries.
https://en.wikipedia.org/wiki/Thor_Heyerdahl /boats_ra_ii but they did it. It's still pretty unlikely that the Egyptians actually did sail across the Atlantic, but it's neat to know that they could have. The doctor stationed in Antarctica that removed his own appendix. Goddamn. Wasn't that more like, fuck me, I have to do it myself. When Nintendo turned down a collab with Sony. Then Sony said, fuck it, we'll do it ourselves. The rest is history. To be fair, I think it's great they did. Nintendo and Sony are so different, there's plenty of room for both. The first thing that comes to thought here is the Louisiana Purchase. Congress planned on buying a small piece of the available land, but Jefferson used some interpretation fuckery to double the size of the US without congressional approval. Seward's decision to buy Alaska from Russia. Best folly ever. When Julius Caesar decided to just up and fucking march into Rome to declare himself the military leader. Or how about his Rhine bridges that he built in a few days to cross an army over a river, then went back over and demolished it just because his army could.
It's said the Germanic tribes saw his army do this and basically shit themselves. Imagine being some nomadic tribe and an invading force comes to a river, builds an entire bridge, crosses it, shits in your land and then goes back home and destroys the entire bridge all in less than a week. Henry VIII couldn't get his way with the Pope, so he made the Church of England so he could do what he wanted. This man legit made his own damn religion, which millions still follow today, just so he could cheat on his wife. Edit, he was already cheating on his wife, he wanted to divorce her to marry his mistress. A man who was a tractor mechanic company owner made a good chunk of money and bought a Ferrari. He felt that the car wasn't as good as it could be, and it wasn't very comfortable, so he brought his complaints all the way to Enzo Ferrari, the owner of the company. Enzo insulted the man, saying a mere tractor mechanic didn't know how to make a sports car. That sparked a rivalry that lasts to this day. That man was Ferruccio Lamborghini. Edit, thanks to UTDS 755 and UKingChameleon07 for correcting me. Tractor mechanic? Italian manufacturing magnate. Lamborghini tractors are still produced, although not by the car company. During the American Revolution, John Paul Jones sailed over to England to burn down British naval ships. He succeeded of course, and made back safely. After the revolution he was even pardoned by the town that he burned most of the ships in. Deleted. Deleted. Bless him. I have an ulcer and because of him we have a better understanding of how to treat it. The dude in the war with wounded fingers. A doctor wouldn't amputate them so he bit them off himself. My great grandpa did the opposite. They were gonna amputate his feet in WW2 and he said nah, so he went a wall and treated his wounded feet on his own. When he came back with 2 perfectly good feet he basically said, I wanted to keep my feet and I wanted to keep fighting, and as far as I know he didn't get any kind of punishment, even though he was gone for weeks. Leonid Rogozov removing his own appendix or Ines Ramirez Perez doing her own C-section. Rogozov was a Dr. Perez a poor Mexican woman. The guy who made body armor shot himself to test it. I mean, I'd use a test dummy the first few times. Metallica fired Dave Mustaine, 1983, because he was sort of a control freak and wanted to take the band in a more prog jazz metal direction. He was also abusing drugs and was known for violent behavior at the time. He went off and created his own band Megadeth, and over the next 30 plus years he sold millions of albums and toured the whole world writing and controlling pretty much everything he's ever wanted. It seems they've all now patched things up. Dude is an absolute genius beast of a guitarist songwriter. Also, when guitarist Hillel Slovak died, 1988, John Frusciante was a 19 years old kid and a huge fan of the Red Hot Chili Peppers. He was heartbroken and didn't want to see the end of his favorite band. So he went and auditioned to play lead guitar. He got the gig. Helped take them to the top of the charts. The rest is history. Today he's considered one of the greatest rock guitarists out there. I do love Megadeth, but I wouldn't want to be in a band with Dave Mustaine. It's a weird win-win-win situation. Metallica didn't have to deal with Dave. Dave got to go and be Dave, and we got to enjoy both Metallica and Megadeth. Martine Rothblatt, founder of SiriusXM and Unbelievable Polymath, was told her daughter Genesis had 3 months to live. She had been diagnosed with a type of pulmonary arterial hypertension which was fatal. The disease causes too much pressure in the blood vessels leading from the heart to the lungs, causing them to narrow and not carry enough oxygen. So Rothblatt quit all of her other work and went to the library to save her daughter. Even though she had zero background in the field, she figured out a cure and in the process founded United Therapeutics, which is a billion-dollar biotechnology company. Rothblatt's life story is amazing. Marie Curie, Polish French chemist and physicist who, without going into great detail, died of constant exposure to radiation while seeking a cure for others, more or less sacrificed herself as a human guinea pig, knowing full well the consequences of her actions. Here in Scotland we have many Marie Curie charity shops who provide funds for hospices and the like. I'm pretty sure she's responsible for saving my ass and many countless others for her pioneering works. Was quoted in July 1912 as saying, "Fuck it, I'll do it myself." Allegedly. Clara Lemlich taking the stage at a union meeting in 1909 to declare a general strike after the older male union leaders told the working girls that there really wasn't a point in striking and it would be too hard, just be patient and deal with it. So 20-year-old Clara interrupts them, climbs up on the stage, and shouts at the crowd that she's tired of just talk, time to strike, and everyone went for it. Instant agreement of the workers. Wow, this got some attention. So editing to add that, I dug up my old research. A translation of what she said, originally in Yiddish, was, "I have listened to all the speeches and I have no further patience for talk. I, too, have worked and suffered, and I am tired of talk. I move that we go on general strike. Now." Which union? Closest I can think of is Erwin Rommel during the Blitzkrieg, seeing an opportunity to make an exploit and instead of waiting said fuck it and charged 200 miles into French territory. Which is interesting since in WW1 the German leader, can't remember his name, pushed beyond where he was supposed to since the French resistance sucked, but it partially cost them the war for overextending. The Soviet woman that lost her husband to the Nazis sold everything and to pay for a tank with the request that she gets to drive it to fight Nazis. Go read up about Maria Oktyabrskaya on Wikipedia. Hannibal of Carthage deciding to take his army over the Alps, includes war elephants. Defeated every Roman he crossed, and definitely could have taken Rome itself if he'd received reinforcements and siege artillery. But the Carthaginian senators were lining their pockets with Roman bribes in return for voting against sending reinforcements. Spoiler alert, it did not end well. When Sony and Nintendo partnered for a CD add-on for the SNES, but Nintendo decided to partner with Philips instead, leaving Sony behind. Sony took all the knowledge about video games that they learned from working with Nintendo and created the PlayStation. All the while Nintendo was still buying the sound chips for the SNES from Sony. Alexander the Great solving the Gordian knot by cutting it with his sword. Alexander loved to do things like this. During the Maulian campaign near the end of his conquests, his army was besieging a citadel. Alexander thought the battle was taking too long, so he took a ladder, climbed up the citadel wall himself, and suicidally jumped over the wall into the heart of the enemy garrison. He sustained awful injuries during this battle, but perhaps in part due to his recklessness, his army was able to complete the siege of the citadel. Sir Ranulph Fiennes, after an expedition, I think to the Arctic, had frostbitten digits on one hand. After becoming irritated and uncomfortable waiting for the docs to sort out treatment, he went to his garden shed and amputated them himself. George Clooney bought his own spy satellite to prove the alleged crimes of an African warlords because nobody else would. Deleted. Here's a notable mention, albeit somewhat obscure. Samra Genstreif once made 40% of the dishwashers in the USA at the time. He fell ill with a kidney stone and went to his local hospital in Indiana. Upon leaving, he was disgusted by the waiting times and quality of care. He took matters into his own hands and created a hospital and founded the Regenstreif Institute. This institute helped map the genome of COVID-19 and translated its finding into 20+ languages, helping the world fight this virus. Edit, showering me with all the treasure, my first time gold and silver, I'm thrilled. Henry Ford proposed to buy Ferrari so that Ford could be competitive in the performance car market. The deal was about to be signed, but Enzo only wanted to sell the commercial Ferrari division and not the racing arm. So Henry Ford said fuck it, and thus was born the Ford GT40. Ferrari is pretty much the reason two other sports car companies exist. Leroy Jenkins. Oh my god, he just ran in. When Pedro Serrano realized Jobu wasn't going to help him hit a damn curveball. Even has the quote to go with it when he says, "I say fuck you Jobu, I do it myself." Wasn't there that Russian? Of course he was Russian. Doctor that did stomach surgery on himself, with only a bottle of vodka for anesthetic. He was stuck in Antarctica and was the only doctor available. He got a group of people to hold mirrors and hand him stuff and had another group for if anyone passed out. He then took out his own appendix. Lioness of Brittany. https://en.m.wikipedia.org/wiki/Jean_de_Clisson. My Revenge is one hell of a name for a pirate ship that gets a point across. General Vladimir Karpovich Pikolov was in charge of the chemical troops of the Soviet Union during the Chernobyl incident. When asked to get one of his men to get a reading of the radiation levels inside the reactor, he said he'll just do it himself. Fun fact, not only he survived the radiation until 2003 where he died normally, he also survived 3 of the deadliest battles in the Russian front during WW2. Stanislav Petrov making the decision not to push the button to launch nuclear missiles, as would have been his direct orders when the Russian early warning system wrongly indicated the launch of American missiles in 1983. One man saved the entire world from nuclear destruction. So this is undeniably the greatest of these moments in all human history. There should be a statue of him in every major city around the world. Edit, spelling. Edit, more spelling.